Hello and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. And today I am joined by Michael Chamberlain, who is part of one of the most exciting projects that I've come across for a while, and it's called One Small Town. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite, Anna.
What is it? What's One Small Town?
What is One Small Town? Okay. It's something that people either get straight away, or it's something that often they need to give it some further thought to understand how it all comes together. But from the beginning, it was the brainchild of Michael Tellinger, who wrote a book called Ubuntu Contributionism. And Ubuntu essentially means I am because we are, or unity in community. And the idea of contributionism is one where each person in a community can make a contribution towards that community, and in return receive the prosperity of that community from the entirety of the community's work. So you provide a contribution, and in terms of One Small Town, that's 3 hours. You provide a 3-hour contribution each week, and in return you receive a portion of whatever is produced or made or created within that town. So that's where the origins came from, and ultimately it means being in a community without money, which is a hard concept for people to comprehend, because of course we're all very conditioned to the idea that money is part of the universe and that the world revolves around money, right? So the idea that money becomes less important is hard for people to get their head around sometimes. But yes, so they either kind of get it or they need to have it explained to them. And so there are principles in the book that I'd recommend people read the Ubuntu book. Some details have changed, but the principles remain the same. And if I were to look at a day in the life of a One Small Town, well, to paint a picture, you might want to leave your house. So you would approach the front door. There wouldn't be any bills on the mat because you wouldn't be receiving any bills. And this is ultimately in the future. And then you would leave your home and you would catch the nearest transportation, whatever transport it is the town has deemed suitable. And that might be, it might be a bus, it might be some new form of transport that's better for the environment and better for the community. And that's free because you make your contribution 3 hours a week to the town. And you travel into the town, whereupon you stop at the coffee shop, and you go into the coffee shop and you will go and get a free coffee. And you'll get a free coffee because you make a 3-hour contribution each week. And then you might go to the hairdressers and book a free hairdresser's appointment. You might book your car in for a free service at the local garage. And then you might collect your free basket of groceries for the week that you have free, again, because you contribute 3 hours to the town. So that would be a kind of a day in the life of a One Small Town ultimately. But of course, we do have to get there slowly, and we do still live in a world that revolves around money. And so we do need money in order to get to that point. So at the moment, we are using money in order to liberate ourselves from the system. So we're using the tools of enslavement as tools of liberation, as Michael puts it. So so that's kind of a day in the life of One Small Town. I hope that's provided a nutshell of how it works.
It has, and it's brought a couple of questions.
It usually does. Yes, usually has more questions than answers, I have to say. So I don't claim to have all of the answers. Communities will invariably, work with each other to figure out all of the answers that might face them within their town. But there are some fundamental ones, yes. So I presume a couple have sprung to mind.
Well, the first one that I think needs to be addressed is the concept of community, because we all know about communism.
Yes, indeed.
The word communitarianism has been flying around, which in my mind is communism by another name.
Sure.
Both concepts completely deny the rights of individuals.
Sure.
And we see a very strong move in that direction with the attitude from top-down government all over the world at the moment, which is about denying the rights of individuals, not least of which the most shocking one has been, I believe, recently Finland, which has basically scrapped the Nuremberg Code, even though they were signatories to it, saying that, hey, no longer applies. It was a historical context of its time and actually no longer applies. So when we're talking about the importance of community in one small town, what is the relationship of one small town to its individuals?
Okay, so communism is a very different thing to contributionism, mainly because communism is a top-down government-led agenda. Contributionism is a bottom-up led contribution. So whereas in the other major difference, of course, is that in communism, the state owns everything and people work for the state. That's completely the opposite in contributionism, because the people own everything within the town to one degree or another, and they will always have a major stake in whatever businesses and projects are happening within the town. So they would have a group of trusted people who were community-minded community members, who would be in some ways listening to the townspeople and enacting whatever projects and whatever businesses the townspeople suggested to them. The people in the town would, those that are members, and it's not, unlike communism, it's not a requirement that you are a member. You can join one small town, but equally you can not join one small town. But those who are members will make a 3-hour contribution per week to usually projects and businesses that align with their skill sets. And for that, the community will always take a share of whatever products and whatever profits those businesses produce, and it'll always be 60%. So there'll always be majority share ownership by the people. So it's a bottom-up approach as opposed to communism, which is top-down. And the idea is that actually we almost don't need any top-down approach. We don't need any of the top part, because people within the town are quite capable of making sensible decisions about their own community for the most part. And as long as we follow, natural law and the instincts of people to want to work together, then each town, I'm sure, will have their challenges, but ultimately people want to prosper in a town that looks good because the projects they're doing there are beautifying the town, but also one that helps the people there to prosper and caters for their needs. It's not based on how much the government want to give you, it's based on how much the people want to create and what they want to create. So there is a very fundamental difference. So I can understand why people say the word communism, but to me that it's means that they need to go through a learning curve with one small town to understand that actually it's the opposite of communism. And in terms of things like capitalism, well, in the words of Michael Tellinger, contributionism devours capitalism wherever it goes, because it will always have an edge over the capitalist market. So it is fundamentally different.
It is, and I think we need to take into account the fact that capitalism, as it has been practiced before, let's just say that it can be corrupted and that it has been corrupted very much. But where it is advantageous is that it does allow for individuals to be motivated. And what you're looking at, I would say capitalism has not been taken out of it completely. It's just that we're capitalizing together for our individual and mutual benefit. And I think I don't like to just see capitalism as a dirty word, if you like, because the freedom which we have had in the West is very much dependent on that imperfect though it is system. So I think we need to look at this as a community working to create its capital and benefit from it, together and individually.
Sure. In some ways, I would argue that the freedoms we have in the West are not really down to capitalism, because capitalism does mean that people are required to go to work, required to earn money, required to follow certain legislative demands, and that actually freedom isn't so much choosing the path of work that you want to take because it's your passion and it's where your skills lie, but usually choosing a path of work in a job that a lot of people don't like, working hours that a lot of people don't want to work, for companies that don't appreciate them. And what tends to happen in capitalism is, of course, the few benefit over and above the rest. And so, a company moves into an area, they suck up all the labor force and all the energy of all the people, and then once the profits have stopped coming in, they just shut down and leave. And that, to me, is not the kind of model that I think most people, it's the model that we're used to and we're conditioned to, but I don't think it's a model people would choose if they had the chance. So yeah, I do think to some degree we are slaves in the capitalist system, and the few thrive over most people's suffering, if you like. So I guess that's sort of my take on it. But one small town is something, it's separate from that, and it's not that we want to bash capitalism or any other type. We want to just grow contributionism, because we just think that is any system perfect? I don't know, but I haven't come across one that fulfills as much for people as the idea of Ubuntu does.
No system is perfect because we are all fundamentally flawed, but we also have tremendous potential to do wonderful things. And that's why I like this concept very, very much. And I think it feels to me like the next stage on from where we are. So I find that very, very interesting.
Yeah,
and
can I just sorry,
yes.
can I just add that for me, I've gone down the same sort of journey that a lot of people have been down, the aware community. If I said the word aware, I think most people would understand that we're talking about a whole bunch of raft of subjects that we've all become aware of. And so my journey was very similar. And so for me, there was a point in time at which I stopped looking at what the problems were and wanted to look at what solutions were out there, because it just seemed like the logical step to, well, okay, well, what can we do about all this? And so I've been watching very closely for 1 to 2 years for something that I could get behind. And I've seen a lot of really worthwhile schemes and really worthwhile energy put into, all kinds of groups doing all kinds of really honorable work. But for me, it fundamentally always came back to the idea that regardless of what work you undertake, you are still within a system and you're working in the petri dish of that system. And as long as that system has a hold over you in terms of your money, your house, your car, the laws, all of those aspects, then you are really going to be ultimately answerable to that system. And when I came across One Small Town, to me it just said, okay, we don't have to try and fix a broken system. We just have to work around it. And this provides us with that parallel alternative method that actually, it on every level to me just seemed much more in line with the way that people work, in their lives and spiritually, and how we all perceive a community together, rather than being driven apart. So I don't know if that helps elaborate on that point.
Of course it does, and it makes sense, because it's what we're looking at is ultimately finding a way of being on this earth together, which causes the least harm possible to ourselves and to all who live on this planet, all the creatures within it, all the plants within it, and the planet itself. That's what we're looking at. And we can see where the system that we have been operating under has gone and the direction in which it's heading. And many of us would really like to hop off right now, please. It's a question of where to hop off to. And this has been a philosophical debate that has gone on for centuries. And of course, it is the very reason that communism came about. It was trying to find a different way. But of course, as you've said, that was never going to be an answer, because it was never about the people. It was always about controlling the people, supposedly for the benefit of the people. It was, and remains to this day, an incredibly damaging way of doing things, because it annihilates the rights of individuals. So I wanted to get that ironed out straight away, that this is not another system which is riding over individuality, but it is about individuals coming together to create something. And I think that that's what's exciting about it.
Sure. Yep.
Now, you mentioned natural law, and I think at this point it might be a good time to explain what that is.
Okay, well, you're with Cabby, and I'm a member of Peacekeepers as well, and I've done some work on that side in terms of trying to understand how the law works. And I think the natural law is our inalienable rights that we're all born with, and it's knowing right from wrong. I think at a fundamental level, that's what it is. And it's when it comes to making judgments in natural law, then it's down to the judgment of your peers. And for those who follow natural law, most people know right from wrong anyway. So for me, I'm just going to keep it a very basic, simple answer. But natural law is not legislation. It's what we're all born with, our inalienable rights, and those are the ones that rule nature and that rule most people before any legislation comes into play. So One Small Town wants to work in that kind of vein, in terms of we don't lay down any laws. Anything that the communities decide to do is for the benefit of the community. If it has to be good for everybody. And the same goes for any businesses and practices that we want to set up. Ultimately, we want those to be without harm, loss, or damage to the wider world. And we obviously see a lot of the harms that are being caused by a lot of industries, and that's not what we want to achieve. We want natural processes that align with natural therapies and forms of transport and forms of power that do not damage the environment. So those are aspects that we are researching and looking into. So.
And you said the key words there: without harm or loss. There was a third.
Harm, loss, or damage, yes.
That's it. Okay. Without harm, loss, or damage. And those are the key points when we are indeed talking about natural law. Now, many people are going to be skeptical because their faith in humanity is somewhat jaded, and they're going to be sitting there thinking, oh yeah, and how is this going to be enforced? And the word there, forced, is important as part of enforced. So as we've already said, and we know human beings are flawed, how do we ensure that there is fairness operating in the community and that there aren't individuals for whom temptation to be unscrupulous doesn't take over and suddenly they're wanting to control everything and we're back to where we were to begin with?
Sure. Well, in contributionism, in the model that we operate, there isn't one person that's in charge of anything. Not one person. There isn't a Mr. Computer software philanthropist that will come in and buy up One Small Town or any business or aspect of One Small Town, because no one owns the overriding shares of it other than the people within the community. So it's not something where someone can take advantage of any particular aspect, because there's no one that can buy the whole thing off or buy an aspect of it off from. So in terms of controlling sort of nature, it's not possible with contributionism. The community owns the businesses. Now, there are cases where there may be a business owner within a town who perhaps has, say, a bakery, and they can opt into One Small Town, and the community members within the town can then work within the bakery, providing that free labor through their contribution. If that's the case, then the community needs to receive 60% of the benefits from that bakery, and the owner will receive 30% of the net profits, because they've contributed really a lot of their business, the premises, etc. But what they're getting is a free labor force, and also potentially a guarantee that that community is the customer of that business. So they have almost a guaranteed customer base, they have a guaranteed income, they have a free labor force, and they're also providing bread, if you like, or baked goods to the community, to all the community members. No one is forced, because membership is optional. You can drop in and out of membership anytime you like. Those people that are members and contribute to One Small Town and their community will receive the benefits from that community. And that incidentally also that means a share of all of the businesses. So even though you may work in the bakery, there may be a coffee shop down the road, well, you will receive a portion of the 60% profit from that business as well. The idea is that the community is to become more abundant and more prosperous, and we can do that by playing the shall we say, the elitists at their game. We can also use that money for the benefit of the community, and so it goes back to the community that's working in it. So it's not a requirement, it's an option that you can take. And what we are starting to find in the countries where they have begun One Small Town is that actually when people see the benefits that the members are getting by contributing their 3 hours, actually it just seems too tempting. The idea that you work 3 hours a week, usually within a business that suits your skill set or your passions, and for that you will receive a portion of every item in the business potentially. And that might be from a groceries, it might be one potato to start with, it might be one coffee a month. But as it grows, the production of the town becomes greater, the profits become greater, and so does the amount that we produce. So yeah, I'm probably going off on tangents here, because there is so much to One Small Town.
You're not, because there's this issue of scaling up in a sense, because 60% for the community, but then, you know, how many members are there in the community? So everything gets, you know, you get the fraction, but it doesn't matter, because the bigger the community, the more services are being provided. And therefore you might get one small fraction of everything, but it adds up to
Yes,
a nice amount. So
absolutely.
that's the idea. And so, okay, so as you were talking, and we were addressing the issue of human nature, and
Sure.
how to ensure that no one person becomes dominant over the group, or in some way, or that there aren't any abuses of power. It it made me think about what's the word anarchy here, because there's no center as such. There's no one coordinating. There's no one telling us what to do. And this is a truly revolutionary way of doing things, because we are used to somebody being the keeper of the law, and there being those whose jobs it is to ensure that the law is being followed. And actually the correct word in this context would be to enforce the law. So how do we deal with things like someone who's taking advantage of others by perhaps being unpleasant, or making the work environment unpleasant? Let's put it that way.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I think I would make a correction on that. And I would say it's not necessarily down to human nature. I'd say that's down to modern nature. The modern society has made us more fearful. It's made us, it's given scarcity to a lot of people. It's driven a lot of people to do acts that they wouldn't normally do. I don't think people would choose to go out and rob a shop. I don't think people would choose to go out and mug other people. I think people only choose those kinds of actions when they are in scarcity and when they're in fear. Now, if you imagine living in a community where actually everything is provided for you that you want, and that you can have pretty much the same as anyone else in that community, there's no reason to take something off someone else when you can just ask and receive that item yourself. So it creates certainly more of a leveling, so that people don't feel like they are the bottom of the rung, and therefore they have to resort to any kind of nefarious means to obtain anything. And I don't think people would vandalize a community that the next week they may be tasked to go out and clean the graffiti off the walls with. I don't think people would break bush shelters if they knew that their neighbor had to repair it the next day. So I think nature changes based on the surroundings people are put in. If you put people into a surrounding, and I'm sure you probably agree with me here, I would have thought, but if you put people into a community of abundance where people are caring, they are sharing, they are loving, and they are healthy, then I think the amount of law breaking reduces dramatically anyway. And so we would still have, obviously, peacekeepers, and each town might have their own set of laws based on the area that they are in, or how the community, whatever the community feels is needed. But fundamentally, it will be based upon the idea of you are a sovereign being and you have rights, and no one can take those away from you, along those sort of lines anyway. So that while there may be variables, the difference between that and anarchy is that anarchy is kind of every community for themselves. And so that's where one community can clash with another over resources. But actually, in one small town, we share all the resources. So we use the same framework. So the town next door to you, they may have an abundance in energy, and your town may have an abundance in water, perhaps, or some other resource. Well, you would exchange resources between those towns. There would be no reason to go and battle with that that town in order to rob them of their resources, which is a lot of what we see today, of course. People go into countries and they take resources that don't even belong to them, and they belong to the people, yet the people mine them and work them. And so the resources would be there enough for people because we're all under the same sort of framework that is one small town. So what that also means is you can move town, fly halfway across the world in a world where contributionism is the dominant. Then you could fly halfway across the world, register into a local town, and be provided with everything that town produces, and contribute your 3 hours there. So it's no different wherever you go. So I would say anarchy is a bit more working in independent communities, whereas one small town is a collection of communities all working under the same banner. If that makes sense.
So you're operating on the assumption that human nature is more inclined towards collaboration than competition.
Yes.
And that in actual fact, given the chance, most people would choose to be collaborating rather than competing. And I would agree that there are many studies that show that this is the case for the majority of the population. However, there is a small percentage of psychopaths out there. So it's good to know that there would still be some recourse to dealing with those who, regardless of the positive environment in which they are being invited to partake and thrive, might actually enjoy watching others being unhappy. So, and that is a fact of life. It exists, and we would be naive to not recognize it, because all the evidence of the world suggests otherwise. Shows us that these people exist. However, I think you are right that it is the majority of people do not follow the model of social Darwinism, and would actually like to just be happy and get on with others.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, you're right. There's always kind of the few, isn't there? But we still do have laws in place through the community. And we also have to remember that people don't want necessarily, or the vast majority of people don't want to be the outsider. They want to be included in the community. They want to feel part of something. If you do nothing but create ill will towards that community, you're going to be cast out at some point or other. The likelihood is the community is going to not want you there, and that is I think a normal leveling part of being human. And so we can only cater for the vast majority of people, and those that want to operate outside of that, well, there are tools that we have in place. That's why we have peacekeepers, right? So they can hopefully deal with any items that come up like that. And we can't cater for every single eventuality in every single scenario, but we can give people the tools to say, okay, well, if we create a community of abundance and prosperity and love, then whatever happens within that community, you can figure it out. So yeah, that's kind of where we come from.
And it's important, because although my questions are rather boring, from the point of view I want to be thinking about those things.
Yes.
When we're presented with what appears to be a very idealistic way of operating, we need to be able to test the ideal and see how it works in practicality. And so that's why, how do we help the community live within natural law when we know that there are going to be people who break that natural law, simple though it is, to live without harm, loss, or damage. So it's an important thing, because we've got used to supposedly being protected by the society that we live in through law enforcement. And if we're not operating that type of law enforcement, and we don't have a judiciary to which most people have no recourse because they can't afford it, it might be
Absolutely.
said. So how can there possibly be justice if the average person has no access to the legal system, and it's a legal system that they have no training in for the majority, and so is completely alien? Nevertheless, we've been conditioned to look at that as some sort of security. I feel myself that this is a placebo, that the reason our society has been as peaceable as it is because most people actually want to live in peace. It's not because of the law enforcement that is there necessarily, or the judicial system, which is wonky to say the least. It's so looking at the model of one small town seems to be interesting to me, because there's no placebo here. There's a community that's wanting to say, okay, we're coming together to create the services that we need, and we're all going to pitch in and create the services that we need, and we're going to work together to make sure that we're following natural law so that what we do causes no harm, loss, or damage. So, okay, that's interesting. Right, now, here's a tricky question.
Sure.
And the tricky question is this, because on more than one occasion, you have referred to transport being public transport. And yet, individual transport is absolutely key for freedom.
Sure.
So, are you saying that one small town categorically shuns individual transport?
No. No, we all have a right to freedom to travel, freedom of movement. I think it's in the Bill of Rights. We all have freedom of movement. And so you can go wherever you like. And if you want to, in an ideal one small town scenario, assuming planes are still around at that point, then if you want to catch a plane and go to another country, then that is free. And it's free because people contribute their time to keep and run airports for the benefit of people. And so in a contributionism society, ultimately everything that you would want to have and to do is available to you. Everywhere you want to go is available to you. And so that it's more about it's giving more freedom rather than taking any freedom away. What kind of transport we all use to get around in? Well, I think that will change. I think there are forms of transport out there that are being withheld, perhaps, or not explored as thoroughly as they could be. And we in the background we look at these kind of technologies as well, and we want to bring those on for the benefit of the people. Even transport and energy that doesn't harm the environment, that is good for the vast majority of people, and that aids freedom. So yeah, I think it's more about having more freedom than taking it away. Although there's no reason why you can't get on a plane and go to another community and just contribute your 3 hours there instead.
Or indeed into your car at the moment, because that is available to us.
Yes.
And there is a very good reason why so many millions of us have a car. And
absolutely,
it's freedom and it's convenience as well. So, and sometimes out in the country there is no other choice. So we need to be aware of that. But I like the idea that you're looking at different technologies that would allow us to maintain that level of freedom and convenience, but be have less of an impact on our world. And I think that that's got to be a very exciting prospect. So it's good that we're clearing up these potential confusing points.
Yes, I guess we have to remember that the reason these technologies are around is because they make money for a handful of people, not because they're good for everybody. And so why would we want them around when there are inventors out there? And we're working on that side of it as well, in terms of working with inventors to bring forward better options for technology in the future. And so and the plan is to make that available to every town eventually. So there's no reason to make big corporate profits for a few people. We would create products for everyone to live in abundance and have access to. So yeah, just that really, I guess. Yeah.
Well, for those who are watching, I think this is an unusual subject to our interview, because we are talking about, to a certain extent, philosophy, to a certain extent, we are talking about politics. But it belongs here, and it belongs here because I feel that there's a very spiritual drive behind this. Because when we say, actually, we're going to set up a society based on natural law, that is a fundamental spiritual aim. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And we know what the current system is like. We know that it doesn't align well with most people. We know that it enslaves most people, and that people often think that's all we have available to us, and it's not. We can create something new and better, and in fact we are doing that. This isn't something where we came up with an idea and thought, wouldn't that be nice? There's a whole raft of people globally who are creating one small towns, and so this is something we're working on all the time. We have towns set up in other countries that are creating community projects. They're beautifying their communities. They are creating businesses that, incidentally, we're not here to butt heads with the system. We are using the tools that they give us absolutely according to the laws that they set down for us in this current system, and using the mechanisms that they provide and the tools. We are doing everything above board in terms of the current system, in order that eventually the current system will become less important, because at the moment we still need to finance a lot of the businesses that we want to set up. We still need investors, and so we are working on that side of it. And we're developing business plans and business ideas, and we have some that are coming to fruition very soon, so that we can start to bring money to the whole initiative, and then plow that into creating more and more projects and more businesses within the communities that start at one small towns. So this is it's happening, and it's exciting times, I would say. I couldn't say exactly where it's going to go. I think we're all on a journey with this, but I've definitely not been involved in something this exciting for a long time.
Well, the sky is the limit, as they say.
Yeah, and we'll protect the skies as well. So,
So, if people want to find out more, Michael, what do they do?
Well, initially, in the first instance, they can go to onesmalltown.org. They can even register as a member on the site. They can contact myself if they're in England. Just email england@onesmalltown.org. if they're somewhere else in the UK, so if they're in Wales, Ireland, Scotland, they can email uk@oncemoretown.org, or they can email Wales at oncemoretown.org, or Ireland, whichever is their respective place. And really, we don't get involved necessarily in the outlining of countries. It's more just in terms of how we work in terms of the patch that we operate in. So yeah, England at One Small Town, if you want to email me. What I'm looking for is the beacon towns, the people who want to commit to One Small Town, want to begin projects within their town, want to beautify their town well beyond what local authorities can do, that are able to provide time to promote One Small Town within their town, and it does gather strength once you start to promote it, and really just to become that beacon that we can use as a working demonstration within England. So we're talking to a number of groups, a number of individuals, and if anyone wants to get more involved, then go to onesmalltown.org initially, sign up as a member, and then contact myself or through the site, and we'll be happy to discuss how you might want to contribute towards One Small Town.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your time today, Michael.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Anna. I really have enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching. And we're going to kind of carry on with the theme of caring, as next time we look at empathy and how to be a confident empath. Until then, goodbye.